Hello everyone. I'm Lun YIN. I'm from the Center for Biodiversity and Indigenous Knowledge. At the same time, I am a climate reality leader. Today, it's my great pleasure to attend the National Tribal and Indigenous Climate Conference. In this conference, I would like to introduce my thinking and my work which related with the climate change and indigenous people, especially how the indigenous women can lead the way in the context of climate change beyond the pandemic, and also sharing my working experience from the community level. So my work is focused on the indigenous women and climate change. The specific topic for today is gender-based solutions to improve the climate change adaptation beyond the pandemic. In 2020, indigenous people, especially indigenous women, hit hard by the pandemic. We need the voice from grassroots, and also we need the action, we need the solutions. In this context, our project, Gender-Based Solution to Improve the Social Recovery of Pandemic Crisis, was selected again in the third edition of Paris Peace Forum. The project has been selected among more than 850 applications around the world to be a presentation in the Paris Peace Forum. One important purpose of this project is to fund the gender-based solutions to improve the climate change adaptation and global governance beyond the pandemic crisis for the indigenous people and the local community. I think there are two-level relationship between indigenous women and climate change. The first, indigenous women are facing serious challenge brought by climate change. Women in indigenous people and the local community are more vulnerable than men in the face of climate change, unable to build resilience to climate impact due to their socially constructed role as carriers and dependents. Women's access to information and resource and their participation in decision-making are limited, so the negative effect of climate change will aggravate the social difference between men and women. Women often lack safe and effective ways to access and control land, water, forest, and family resources. When their survival needs and livelihood are threatened by climate change, they are forced to respond with extremely limited resources. Their livelihood are dependent on natural resource, subsistence agriculture, and the informal sector, which are threatened due to climate change. On the other hand, indigenous women are agent force to climate change adaptation. Indigenous women play an important role in many aspects of mitigating and adapting climate change, and they are agent force for climate change, who actively cope with and adapt to climatic and non-climatic stressors. Indigenous women as a supporter of society, family, and implementers of agricultural productions, and their labor is directly linked to natural resources such as water, land, and forest, which are all related to climate change. So there are two weapons for the indigenous women when they face the challenge of climate change. One is the traditional knowledge, second is culture. Women possess specific knowledge and skill. The traditional knowledge has a positive effect on adapting to climate change. For example, to ensure the safety of family food, indigenous women give priority to the preservation and selection of crop variety according to the change of climate and environment. Indigenous women can develop and promote innovative farming methods to adapt to the climate change. Second is the culture, spirit, and belief. Indigenous women bear the responsibility of educating and caring for next generation in the family and the society. The worldview, social value, language, spirit, and belief of indigenous people depend on women's inheritance from generation to generation. Therefore, women have important spiritual power in dealing with climate change and other crises, as well as to improve the social recovery. In this context, I began the action research project in my hometown, Eastern Himalaya in the northwest of Yunnan Province, China. We take the action, gender-based solution to improve the climate change adaptation. This action includes 4 steps. First, we discover the spiritual power of women. Mensamu is a sacred mountain for local people in my hometown. In traditional belief, this sacred mountain is a goddess who protects the local women and takes charge of the local climate and environment. So, based on Mensamu sacred mountain belief, we found the spiritual connection between climate and women. The second step is the discovery the traditional knowledge of women. We distinguish this traditional knowledge as 5 parts. The first is the knowledge for traditional use of agricultural biospecies and genetic resources. The second is the knowledge for traditional use of medicinal biospecies. The third is the traditional technological innovation for bioresource use and traditional practice for farming and living style. The fourth is the traditional culture such as custom law and community protocol that are related to conservation and the sustainable use of bioresources. The fifth is the traditional geographically biological indicators. The third step is we establish the Climate Action Laboratory of Women. There exists a traditional women organization in local village called the Sisterhood and has its own strict custom law for protection natural resources. So we established the Climate Action Laboratory based on this traditional organization Sisterhood and encourage the local women participate in the decision-making process based on the Climate Action Laboratory, which related with natural resource and climate change. The fourth step, we develop the climate adaptation plans and activities for local women. We combine the traditional belief with climate change and carry out several popularization and advocacy on climate change and environment protection based on the traditional belief rituals. And also vegetation restoration and afforestation are carried out on steep slopes to reduce the risk of landslide and debris flows caused by the extreme climate disaster. We protect the sacred forest, sacred tree, river, and spring of traditional culture and mitigate the impact of climate change, such as drought and the temperature rise on local level. And also, we establish the small loan for livelihood development, innovation of traditional knowledge, and encouraging women to actively adapt climate change. So, I think indigenous culture and knowledge is a light of wisdom for adapting climate change for the indigenous people and local community around the world. So let's work together to make our Mother Earth great again. Thank you for your attention.